live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Thursday, August 19th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we have two slates to break down. We're going to kick it off with the main slate, 4-gamer, coming up later tonight. As we work our way through those games, we will start back at the beginning and knock out this 6-game early slate for DraftKings. As you get in the door, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. But let's start here. Adam, how are you? How did your night go last night?
I'm good. Night wasn't anything unusual. Lost, didn't lose anything crazy, didn't win. Typical, baseball night. But excited to have two slates again today because I think that's really fun, even though it's really been brutal for me lately.
I lost 2 bets. One via a run scored in the 9th after thinking I was going to win, and 2 because the Oakland A's pitcher changed and my line got significantly worse. So neither of those things were great. Not at all. And Sean V's victory lapping Luzardo being awful after one data point. That's always fun. Incredible. Just incredible. 122 concurrent viewers, 36 likes. So hit that thumbs up. By the way, I was watching the deeper dive yesterday after Eric did his entire Happy Gilmore and you listened to absolutely none of it. That was incredibly satisfying for me.
Yeah, I wasn't even like being a dick and pretending like I didn't hear him. I just totally did not hear what he was saying. It
was great. I was just like, I've been there. Anyway, we have 10 games to talk about, 2 separate slates, so we will have a bit of a pause in the middle. Let's just kick it off if you're ready. 4-gamer tonight, locking at 7:05.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yankees and Twins, 6.3 run implied total for the Yanks, 4.2 for the Twins. Jameson Taillon and John Gant. Gant is bad. Taillon is less bad, but you want him to be good. 33% ownership going to Taillon right now on DraftKings, just 9% on FanDuel. No ownership going to Gant, nor should it. What do you want to do with Jameson Taillon today?
6,300. I think I want to roster him. I mean, it's only a 4-game slate. He's getting 33% ownership, 36% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He's not bad. He maybe isn't as good as you would like him to be, but he's still struck out about 24% of hitters this season. He's got an elevated, xFIP. He's given up runs. He's allowed 1.37 home runs per 9, but 23.5% strikeout percentage rather is still good, especially for that salary. The matchup against Minnesota is okay. Like they have some dangerous hitters in their lineup. They also have strikeouts. Rooker, Garver, Sano, if Cave's in the lineup, those are all like 30+% strikeout guys. And it really just comes back to he's 6,300. There's not much else on this slate. I mean, you have in that price range, you have John Gant against the Yankees. You have John Lester against anybody. You have Taiwan Walker against the Dodgers. There's not really anything else that you're going to point to that you're going to feel better about.
Showed up in 32% of my lineups, 33% current ownership. I think he is more than properly owned. Is there any justification to Gant given this slate?
I mean, on a 4-game slate, when the opposing team is getting almost 30% ownership, I think you can always make a case, kind of like we talked about yesterday with Chichi Gonzalez and Jake Arrieta on the early slate. You're not expecting them to do well, but there's such limited options that if you're not going to the Yankees, it does make some sense to get to some Gant. Like one thing you could do if you're using Fantasy Cruncher is I think just set a rule so that if you don't have any of the Yankees bats, it bumps John Gant's projection by like 15% or something like that. Just because there is obviously that negative correlation between the Yankees and the Twins. And instead of trying to like walk a tightrope where John Gant doesn't do well, but the Yankees also don't do well, you can kind of just put yourself in a better position and say, screw it. If I don't have the Yankees here, I need them not to do well anyway. If they don't do well, there's a good chance this low-owned, inexpensive John Gant's having an okay game. All that being said, certainly not someone you want, crazy exposure to or anything. He also, actually I take it back because I don't think he even goes deep into this game. He pitched on the 16th. 17 pitches on the 16th, 41 on the 13th. Strategy-wise, what I was saying would apply if he pitched well, he was going to go like 6 innings, but that's not going to happen. So I take it back. I don't have any reason to get the Gant.
I will say this much. I do think the line is a little long. I think the Twins are getting a little disrespected in the betting markets. I have the fair line at -146 for the Yanks. because I don't really know if I should think that Jameson Taillon is all that good, and I think he's getting a little bit too much benefit. This Twins lineup is solid, ignoring the DFS aspects. I mean, this is an above average offense, and they are being treated like they aren't. So
yeah,
that's kind of especially in this park too. Like for them to be projected for 4.2 runs is kind of crazy.
I think Taillon's been a bit better recently too. Double checking that, but it just seems like he's kind of figured stuff out. He's coming off of a rough start against the White Sox, but he had put together a lot of really, really strong starts recently. So I don't know if he, figured anything out, but this is also someone like in the past, he's been a pretty good pitcher. And then this year he kind of, the strikeouts are still there, but he, took a step back. So, I think he's good. I think I get what you're saying. Like he's getting a lot of ownership and the Twins do have some good hitters, but if I can only play one side here, I'm still leaning Taillon.
455 FIP via Steamer. I was just really surprised to see the Yankees be like 2.1 run favorites. It just seems aggressive to me. I don't really have much else to add there. Let's talk about the bats, though. I have the Yankees as unquestionably the number one stack on this slate. Their implied total is not even remotely close to anyone else. And it's not even that I find them over-owned. I think they're pretty properly owned here. Let's start with the Yankees. What do you want to do with these New York bats against Gant?
If they're going to get close to 30% ownership, I think I'm more likely to just like mix guys in against him than go to a lot of full Yankee stacks. Right now we have them projected to be quite a bit overowned, 20% chance of being the top stack and about 29% aggregate ownership. Individually, pulling it up now, but I think that could be driven by like Anthony Rizzo's 3,700 on DraftKings. That price tag just makes absolutely no sense. I have no idea what they're doing. Like they just lowered his price when he got COVID, I guess, and just never raised it. So he's getting 37%. But even looking to the other guys, Gallo at 35, Judge at 34, Odor at 28, Stanton at 25. Like the whole team's just getting a lot of ownership. That's going to make it really, really difficult, especially in your larger field tournaments. I think in smaller field, like if you're playing the $300 on DraftKings, I think there's like 300 or 400 entries in it. It's less of an issue because, you still would rather get to low owned teams. But if you do get to a team like the Yankees and they're 30% owned, you're still competing with, like 100, 150 teams. You have to get lucky, but not to the extent that you do in those, 10,000 person tournaments.
I'm not entirely sure I understand our top stack odds right now. The Yankees have a higher run implied total than the Dodgers by a full run. They are playing in Yankee Stadium, which is very, very, very hitter friendly. And they are facing the worst pitcher on the slate. I'm shocked that they're like 9% behind the Dodgers in the spot. To me, that does not compute. I have the Yankees basically in the opposite order here of the Dodgers. All of the signs point, like every single box that you could check to give the Yankees the best scenario is here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Maybe that updates because I agree with you. Like the way it looks right now, I wouldn't really get to the Yankees, but it also doesn't make a lot of sense to me that the Dodgers are higher.
Yeah, especially with the Yankees being a better value option. Ostensibly, they are easier to roster as well, and that should, to me, drive them back. But we're talking about a team that is just loaded. It's not like there are holes in this Yankees lineup.
Yeah, and they're healthier now too.
Yeah, so I'm anxious to see where that ends up moving because I think the Yankees are going to climb a bit in that top stack odds, and I think the Dodgers are going to come down, and that's going to neutralize them a little bit. Like I have them basically neutral to their current ownership, and I think that makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree with you. I hadn't really thought about it like comparing them to the Dodgers. I thought about it in terms of like what the top stack tool says, but yeah, I agree that there's not really because you can't even make like I know sometimes you'll see in the top stack tool that if there's teams with like similar implied run totals, but one's a little bit lower, they'll have a higher top stack chance, like if they're the road team. But both of these teams are at home too, so it's not that
like Dodgers Park, unquestionably not even remotely close in terms of being an offensive park in comparison to the Yankees. Taiwan Walker, undoubtedly a better option than Gant. It's just like it is how it is. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I think we're going to see those numbers ultimately change. There isn't a starter named, I believe, in the Dodgers. Like, I think it's supposed to be Walker Buehler, but I don't know if that's been announced yet. I don't know if that's driving it somehow. That could be my only expectation is that the Dodgers don't have a starter and something is throwing that data off. I don't know.
Yeah, that's possible.
Let's talk a little bit about the Twins then. I have them fourth overall, but I do have them quite a bit over-owned. They are the biggest negative leverage spot on the slate, bigger than the Yankees even in this sort of scenario. Are you trying to target any Twins bats?
If the ownership comes down, I think like it makes sense because Taillon's getting 33% ownership or so. So it does make sense to go to the Twins because they do have some good hitters, and Taiwan, hasn't been the best pitcher over the course of the entire season. The problem though, and I've talked about it on shows with you before, is I don't just view it in terms of raw ownership. I view it in terms of pitchers and or teams being overowned or underowned. I don't think Taiwan is really overowned here, whereas we do have the Twins projected to go overowned. So I think that actually ends up bumping Taiwan a bit for me, more so than it bumps the Twins up. If the Twins ownership were to come down, then sure, I think it's a spot that I would like to get to just to leverage against that Taiwan ownership. But the way it looks right now, I actually think Taiwan is a better play than the Yankee stacks, which would actually push him up a little bit. Or Twin stack.
Yeah, I don't like the Twins given their current ownership. They obviously work in a vacuum. The lineup is good. There's certainly power potential here. And there are a couple teams like the Marlins, the Cardinals, the Mets that really don't have that high end option. So I'm with you in that I do think that Taiwan is properly owned, but at the very least, the Twins are good too. It helps that they aren't like a shitty offense.
Yeah, I mean they have good hitters for sure.
I still want to have Twins, but I don't necessarily need to get more because of Taiwan.
Yeah, but I also just
what do you want to do with some of this ownership? Yeah, Garver's 31% right now. Josh Donaldson 23, but still only 3,200. I mean, these guys they're cheap. They're really, really, really cheap.
Yeah, they look like better cash plays than tournament plays to me right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have anything else really here for Yankees and Twins?
Nope.
Okay, we'll keep it going. Reds and Marlins. If I type both teams in the same spot, it's probably not going to get me anywhere. 5-run implied total for the Reds, 3.1 for the Marlins. Luis Castillo and Zack Thompson. At least I think it's Zack Thompson. Luis Castillo is currently projected for 78% ownership. I have him at 67, so I don't really have anything to add here. If this were in Miami, he might be in 100% of lineups, but even though it's in a hitter's park, I don't care at all. This Marlins offense isn't very good. Luis Castillo is pretty clearly, to me, the best option you can get to today, although it is close, but to me, it is Castillo.
Yeah, I'm with you. 8,500. He's a little bit cheaper than Woodruff. The Marlins strike out a lot more than the Cardinals do. The only real downside here is that the game is in Cincinnati. But Castillo has also been picking up his strikeout numbers recently, which is good to see. He started the season out pretty slowly in terms of strikeouts. But if you go back over the last month or so, you've seen the strikeout numbers increase for him back to where you'd expect them to be. Coming off of a good start against Philadelphia. Prior to that, he got lit up by the Indians. But 6 2/3, 3 earned runs, 8 strikeouts against the Phillies last start. I just think it's a really good spot for Castillo. It is a 4-game slate. He is projected for about 80% ownership. You certainly can make the case to go to the Marlins, just like you can make the case to go to the Cubs yesterday against Tyler Mahle, just because of how much ownership he's getting. The opportunity cost to stacking bad offenses on a 4-game slate is just a lot lower than it is on bigger slates. If there's 20 other offenses, I'm not really going to be that interested in the Marlins, because not only do they have to do something unlikely and have a good game against Castillo, they also have to have a game where they just beat all these other teams anyway. But on a 4-game slate, it's a lot more viable to get there. So I think you can get to the Marlins in tournaments. They are projected to be underowned. Castillo is getting tons and tons of ownership, but Castillo also, I think, the number one pitcher on the slate. And again, if I can only go to one side here, it's clearly Castillo.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to have a conversation then about, we're not talking about Zack Thompson, right?
What?
At least I assume it's Zack Thompson, Marlins starter.
Yeah, I think I think it's supposed to be Thompson.
He showed up in 1% of lineups. I don't think that he looks very good here. Do you have any interest in him?
Not really. He's not been as good recently as he was to start the season. He's coming off of a pretty good start against the Cubs, but he's also just hasn't been going as deep in the games. They pulled him at 72 pitches after 6 innings in that game. He'd only given up 1 run. There was really no reason he didn't come back out, other than I don't think they want him going that deep. 75 pitches before that, 77 the start before that. Tough matchup against the Reds in Cincinnati. The only case, I guess, that you could make for Thompson is that I would rather go to him, I think, against the Reds than Walker against the Dodgers, if you're trying to get away from one of the 3 really popular pitchers. But other than that, I don't really see it.
Let's talk about Reds bats, because I have them a lot higher than our current top stack tool. I have them second overall and the best leverage stack that is accessible today. So 5-run implied total, major pitcher spark. Zack Thompson is whatever for today. but they've got a 5-run implied total, is basically the exact same as the Dodgers. I think they're affordable. I think they stack well given their positions. What do you want to do with Cincinnati, who we have 5th today in the top stack tool?
Yeah, I like Cincinnati here because they're projected to be a little bit overowned, but not nearly to the extent of a team like Minnesota that has a little bit lower chance of success. They just look pretty good in this park. You wish Jesse Winker was in the lineup. He's on the injured list, so he won't be there. Waters down the lineup a little bit, but Thompson has dropped off a bit lately. He's not a pitcher that's had a lot of minor league success. He's 28-7 or 28, not really a prospect. And then going into Cincinnati here. So I think the pricing is pretty reasonable. We had seen this team be really, really expensive not too long ago, but now they're coming back down. Votto's at 5K. Moustakas is down to 4,600. So I think it's a pretty easy team to stack. And I think there's still quite a bit of power here, even without Winker.
Yeah, like Moustakas at 14% ownership. He showed up in 21% of lineups for me. Dual eligibility, only 4,600. Certainly has the power, plays in this park. Lefty-righty matchup too. Kyle Farmer looking like a decent option that's showing up dramatically underowned. Even like Akiyama showed up a ton when I ran my crunch, which is kind of crazy. 2% ownership right now. Flat min outfielder. Is hitting 8th, not great, but even still, I'm going to advocate pretty aggressively for Cincinnati right now. To me, this would be my Yankees are on a different planet because I think that their chance of being the best team today is significantly more than the Reds, like 50% higher. But I think the Reds are a great option. I think they are going under-owned, at least as of right now.
Yeah, I think they look good.
Any Marlins bats?
No, just what I'd mentioned before. Like, I think that they are projected to go a little bit under-owned. 4% chance of being the top stack, about 2.5% ownership, and then all the ownership going to Castillo. I do think they're a good tournament stack, even though clearly they're not going to work out that often.
All righty. Schedule for the rest of the day, 4 p.m. Eastern time, MMA Strategy Show. Jason Floyd, Pete the Heat Rogers breaking down this Saturday's UFC card. Spoiler alert, it is not a great card. However, main event should be pretty fun, so you don't want to miss that one. MLB live before lock. No deeper dive today. 5:30 to 6:30 or something in that neighborhood. Adam, you will be back with Eric for that one. And then you guys give way to NFL preseason live before lock, 6:30 to 7:30. That will be Laffy and Matt Gajewski. So make sure you're watching all of the shows that we've got coming forward for the rest of the day. Also, free content today. The tool that we're talking about the most so far, MLB Top Stacks. We use it aggressively. I rely on it pretty heavily. I think you guys should too, but it's free today. So if you've been interested to see what it looks like, head on over to Awesemo.com, check out chat, see if Nightbot drops the link. You should check it out. It's a great tool. Cardinals and Brewers, 3.3 run implied total for the Cards, 4.7 for the Brewers. John Lester, Brandon Woodruff. He's in the Castillo boat, pulling 70% ownership on DraftKings, 28 on FanDuel, 10% ownership coming to John Lester. Look, I like Brandon Woodruff a lot. He is unquestionably one of the 2 best arms here, but I prefer Castillo to Woodruff. But at 9,200 and 8,500, just prefer having them both.
Yeah, agreed. Like, I think you're going to get a lot of lineups with both. If I have to choose one, though, it is Castillo, just because I think the matchup's a little bit better. Not only does Miami not have bats that are as dangerous as the Cardinals, but they also strike out a lot more. This Cardinals team is not great offensively in terms of production, but they are pretty difficult to strike out. Woodruff will certainly get some on his own, but the Cardinals aren't really likely to help him out, whereas the Marlins will do favors for Luis Castillo. So if I'm only going to one, I lean Castillo, but Woodruff clearly either the best or second best pitcher in terms of talent on this slate.
How do you feel about going to John Lester, the, at this point in time, cheapest pitcher you can get to today at 5,700, 11% ownership? I think it's about right. It's not fun, but it's a 4-gamer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ownership's about right. I think between these two sides, though, I would rather go to Milwaukee bats than go to Lester's. He's just terrible.
Well, then let's talk about those Milwaukee bats. I have them 5th overall, but Twins, Reds, Brewers, Dodgers, all sort of in the same pack for me. No ownership, though, coming into the Brewers. They are my number 2 leverage stack. So I'm with you. I would much rather just lock up a ton of Brewer stacks. Colton Wong in the leadoff spot at 6% ownership. Like, to get a leadoff hitter in general at 6% in the advantageous environment, very surprising to me. Escobar, Yelich at 6% at 5,700. Sign me up for a Brewers leverage stack.
Yeah, and I mean the right-handed power here too. Adames, Escobar, Garcia, like those guys are all going to look really good. John Lester's only struck out 14% of righties this year, 15% of lefties, 181 expected ISO to righties. He's been pretty good against lefties. He's held them to a 131 expected ISO, 293 expected WOBA. It's really been righties that have gotten to him, but certainly can still go to Wong and Yelich. But I think Garcia, Escobar, Adames, Kane, Urias, Pena, like the right-handed bats here are where I really want to be.
Yeah, it just looks good. I'm very surprised to see their ownership. I think we're going to see a lot of changes throughout the day, and we have plenty of time to do so. This is the late slate. We don't kick that. This doesn't kick off till 7. We're going to dive into the early slate immediately after this. Is there any value in going to the Cardinals bats here? Now, this is an offense that, while they are facing Brandon Woodruff, it's not a bad offense.
It's not a good offense either, but I'd rather go to the Marlins, I think, than go to the Cardinals if I'm only going to one, because I think that the park is better for Miami. I think that Castillo gets more ownership. If I'm only going to one, I think I actually prefer going to Miami.
Wow. I don't think I'm there with you. I don't particularly like going to either of them, but I think I just have to prefer the Cardinals. I think it's just such a better lineup. Aggregate weighted runs created plus for the Cardinals lineup, 103. On the Marlins side, 91. I just want to kind of lean towards slightly more talent. Neither one of them look good. So, I mean, we're talking about like bad options today in theory.
Yeah. Cardinals against right-handed pitching this year, 90 WRC plus, 151 ISO. Miami, 84 WRC plus, 132 ISO. I agree the Cardinals are better, but I just think the park is better for Miami. I think they're both bad. Like they're both in bad spots, and the park's better for Miami.
Yeah, I don't think that either one of us would be like super married to these takes either, picking the two garbage possibilities against the chalk pitchers today. Like,
yeah, and they're kind of the same play too. Like,
yeah,
you're just saying I know it's a low probability thing, but it's going to pay off really well when it hits. Which is, what top heavy tournaments are kind of about. So I would think in 150 max, there's a pretty good chance I'd just get to both. But if I only got to one, I think I'd get to Miami first.
That's fair. Let's close it out with the Dodgers, who we've already sort of touched on already. 5.1 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.9 for the Mets. So I've got it as Walker Buehler for the Dodgers, which is interesting and going to be very important as we move forward. Taiwan Walker going for the Mets. Walker's not pulling any ownership, but I'm just going to put it out there. If it is Walker Buehler, I got him in like 35% of lineups. I think that's going to change the sort of structure at the top as we move forward. Have you seen anything? Are you going with the assumption that it's Buehler?
DraftKings has Gratterall as the expected opener.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything though. And it seems like it should be Buehler because we've just gotten like basically 2 bullpen games in a row with Mitch White and Andre Jackson from the Dodgers with Price sandwiched in between. And then
Gratterall and Evan Phillips is at Fangraphs now. That was Walker Buehler earlier this morning. So
what did you say?
Gratterall as the opener, Evan Phillips as the probable pitcher.
That's what DraftKings has now too.
Okay. Just got added to the 26-man roster prior to Tuesday's game. Yeah, it was listed as Walker Buehler earlier. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it is now Evan Phillips.
In which case the Mets look good.
They look a lot better than if it was Walker Buehler, that's for sure. So let's see. How quickly can I get to this information? Evan Phillips is the name, right?
Yeah. Former Orioles reliever. That's all you need to know.
Do we have any idea how deep this gentleman could go today?
He most recently pitched on the 13th and threw 43 pitches in 3 innings.
All right. So we'll call it 10 outs. I assume the line moves because I think that the line that I had earlier today was certainly based on the thought process of, now it's back to undecided. So that could matter. The only line that I see for this Dodgers game is like minus 180-ish for the Dodgers side of it. So the line that I have in is basically right. So I'm going to run this right now. And do you have any interest in going to Phillips? Let's just start there.
No, I don't have interest in going to Phillips. Not expecting him to go deep into this game, and also don't think he's any good.
He is the flat 4K. I don't know if it matters.
So this year, like most of his career, he's been a reliever. This year, he made one start at AAA for Tampa Bay, 2 total appearances, pitched 25 innings at AAA for the Orioles, struck out 33% of hitters. Like, that's obviously good. Strikeout numbers have been pretty good throughout his career. Again, though, mostly in the minors and as a reliever. 2019 in the bullpen for the Orioles, 28 innings, 28% strikeout percentage. I mean, I guess he's not worse than John Lester, right?
I mean, I think he has to be, given that he cannot likely go deep in this game.
The ceiling is lower because he's not, on the off chance John Lester pitches well, he can go 7 innings. On the off chance Evan Phillips pitches well, he's still going like 3 innings.
Yeah. If I knew they were going the same distance, I would rather have Phillips than Lester. Right. But that's also not happening. So I'm running a crunch now with Phillips in, with the assumption that he can get like 3 1/3. I expect him to pop up at least a little bit, just given the fact that he is the flat minimum. But yeah, I mean, once this is finished, we can talk a little bit further.
August 7th at AAA, he went 2 1/3. August 4th, he went 1. So yeah, I mean, I can't really see him getting more than 3.
Yeah, doesn't seem particularly likely. Let's talk a little bit about Walker, though. Only 6% ownership. Are you trying to attack this Dodgers team today?
So I mean, it's obviously a really, really bad spot, but the lack of ownership is pretty appealing, especially because we like a lot of popular bats on this slate. You know, the Yankees are in a really, really good spot and getting a lot of ownership. This is one spot where you can just kind of roll the dice and say, you know, yeah, Taiwan Walker probably isn't going to pitch well, but nobody's going to roster him on a 4-game slate where there's not a lot of good pitching outside of like 2.5 guys. So I do think ownership wise, he makes sense in lineups where you have more popular hitters. I don't think it's particularly likely he succeeds, though. I mean, it is a really difficult matchup against the Dodgers.
All right. I just finished my crunch, so let's see how this impacts things. Yeah. I mean, Phillips at 3 1/3 innings, he shows up a lot. I'm going to walk that one back now that I don't think that 3 1/3 feels all that likely for him. And it did this does push the Dodgers up a little higher. It does make them easier to roster if Evan Phillips exists. So there is that piece of news as well. It does push up my Luis Castillo and my Brandon Woodruff. But as far as I'm concerned, there are basically like 3 legitimate pitching options here today. Let's talk a little bit about these Dodgers bats. We know how highly they rank on Top Stack Tool right now, taking on Taiwan Walker. I have them second overall. I do think that they look like a great stack, but ownership is probably proper, at least to me. What are you doing with the Dodgers?
Yeah, I'm with you. A lot's going to depend on where the final ownership projections come in between them and the Yankees, because I do think they're the 2 highest upside offenses on the slate, just in terms of talent in their lineup. Walker has been fine overall this year, but he has had more issues lately. He's coming off of a good start against this Dodgers team, but in general has kind of gone downhill since the start of the season. 200 expected ISO allowed to righties this year is pretty high. Only a 21% strikeout percentage makes guys like Justin Turner, assuming he's in the lineup, Will Smith, Trey Turner, all look good. Max Muncy's just been absolutely phenomenal this year. Corey Seager is one of the best hitting shortstops. Bellinger seems to be coming back to life. Just a really, really good Dodgers lineup, assuming we get their A lineup.
How do you feel about the opposite side? What would you like to do with the Mets for today?
So right now, they're not getting much ownership for a team that's facing Evan Phillips and others. So right now, I think they look like the most under-owned team on DraftKings. Yeah. But that also could change, because I'm not sure if our ownership projections are expecting Buehler or Phillips or someone else or what. If their ownership stays low, I am interested, because they are very, very fairly priced. It'll be pretty easy to get to Woodruff, Castillo, good one-offs, whatever you want to do with these Mets. Nimmo's only 3,500, McNeil's 39, Alonso's 4,400 if he's in the lineup, Conforto's 3K flat. This team does disappoint quite a bit, but they do have talented hitters that are really inexpensive and not in a terrible spot.
Is there anything else you want to touch on for this game in particular?
No, I mean, just pay attention to, I guess, who's actually pitching.
All right.
Hopefully we'll have that by the deep or live before lock, but with what the Dodgers have been doing lately, we probably won't.
All right. Well, let's sum this up. Favorite stacks for the main slate for today?
Yankees, if their ownership comes down a little bit. If it doesn't, then I think Milwaukee. And the Mets, if their ownership doesn't go up. It's really hard to say right now because there's so much moving stuff.
Absolutely. And your main pitching thoughts for today?
Castillo and Woodruff, obviously. Taillon's the best value pitcher. Taiwan Walker right now, very, very risky spot, but also should probably be getting more than 20% the ownership that Jameson Taillon's getting.
All righty. A lot of promos going on around these parts right now. First of which, free soccer, FREESOCCER. Premier League is back. We've got soccer projections for you. If you want to check them out, because games are coming up, we'll have a slate on Saturday. Use that promo code, get a week of Awesemo Plus Soccer for free. Not going to cost you a cent. Now, the one that I think everybody's really caring about, that would be Blitz. Awesemo Plus annual package for the NFL gets 25% off. We don't offer discounts on our annual packages all that frequently. This is a big time savings. If you were planning on playing NFL DFS or subscribing to Awesemo in general, you should be using this promo code. That's player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, premium slack, and more. You don't want to miss out on it. Take that discount now, lock in that lower price. It's a great idea. But we also have our fantasy football draft kit now available. That's for season long and for best ball leagues. It's the same projections and tools and analysis that we have for NFL DFS, but it's going into draft wingman, our best ball rankings, stack rankings, trade value charts, and more. You can receive up to a $35 credit for underdog and FFPC leagues. Use the promo code WR at checkout. Get 33% off. It's going to be less than $10 for everything we have to offer for season long and best ball, given the fact that you get that $35 credit. You should check it out. I've got content coming up using this content starting next week. I'm going to be doing a live draft using our draft wingman tool. You're not going to want to miss it, guys. Probably going to be sometime around 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time on Monday. So keep your calendar open. Are you ready to switch to the 6-game early slate?
Yep.
I will be ready in a second. I am just updating a little bit of the data on the back end since we've had some changes to lines and we've started to get some lineups in for these early games. But we got a 6-gamer. It's a pretty nice early slate. I assume you're pretty excited for early baseball today.
Yeah, it just makes the afternoon go by a lot faster.
It really does. Jordan, I am updating the lines now. So the next 6 can be updated as such. Done. So kudos there. Are you ready to just start it up?
Sure.
All righty. Well, that makes one of us. Why is nothing in that box? That makes sense. I didn't paste anything. It can't know if there's games if I provide it no games. There is that. All right, here we go. Rays and Orioles. 5.9 run implied total for the Rays, 3.1 for the O's. Shane McClanahan, Jorge Lopez. What do you want to do with pitching in this one?
I like McClanahan here. Orioles only a 3.1 implied run total. McClanahan's price is definitely getting up there at 9,800, and he is getting tons and tons of ownership, which is a bit of an issue. But we have seen him go deeper into games recently when, earlier in the year, he was being limited pretty strictly. We saw 101 pitches last time out, though. Only went 5 1/3, but the fact that he was able to throw 101 pitches is good. Had thrown 92 pitches to start before that, which actually came against Baltimore. He's been a very good pitcher so far this season. He's struck out about 28% of hitters, 3.25 xFIP. So I think the ownership's a little concerning. The salary is really expensive, but I do think it's a really good spot for McClanahan facing the Orioles here in Tampa Bay. On the other side for Jorge Lopez, I think it's a pretty big boom or bust spot. And he's only getting about 1% ownership. So not someone that I'm expecting to get a lot of, but also looking at other pitchers in this price range, there's not a whole lot that stands out. Like Mike Minor's getting a bunch of ownership. He's facing Houston. That's obviously not the best spot to be in. Chris Flexen is getting ownership. He's facing Texas. That is a good spot to be in. But then you have Lopez here at 6,300. The reason I think it's kind of interesting is Lopez, I think, is a pretty average pitcher. He has good stuff. He tends to struggle his third time through the order, but this is a park upgrade for him. And while Tampa Bay does have tons of power, they also do have a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. So not anything I want to go crazy with, but I do think Jorge Lopez actually offers a ceiling here.
Okay. Do you have any concerns with McClanahan's ownership? Second most owned guy on the slate behind Zack Wheeler.
Yes and no. I think it's a lot, especially for someone at 9,800, because it's just really difficult for any pitcher, excluding, a couple like Jacob deGrom. It's really difficult for any pitcher to actually put up a score at 9,800 that you have to have, because on a lot of slates, you can get, 20, 22 points from other pitchers and you'll be fine at pitcher. Typically, you're going to win with your bats. But at the same time, when you look at the alternatives, you have Wheeler, who's getting even more ownership. Dylan Cease has a high ceiling, but he's got a really, really difficult matchup with Oakland. Luis Garcia, it's an okay matchup with Kansas City, probably still a better matchup for McClanahan. So it's kind of like the Charlie Morton spot yesterday, I think, where the ownership was really high, but I still ended up getting even more than the field just because it was really easy to get relatively low owned hitters, still make a pretty, low owned lineup, and then have Charlie Morton because I just thought he looked, better than the alternatives.
Sure. Well, I just finished off my DK side of this crunch right now. And just based on everything that I'm looking at, I'm not even surprised at the McClanahan ownership. We've got him at 45% owned. I have him showing up in 50% of lineups. So no complaints on my end in terms of McClanahan. And for Lopez, showed up a little bit more than the 1% we're showing. So that seems fine. How do you feel about bats in this game? Rays with the massive implied total. Is this a spot you're looking to go?
Yeah, right now they're not even getting that much ownership. We have them projected for about 12% aggregate ownership. That's in the same ballpark as a lot of other teams. Highest top stack percentage on the slate. And the thing is, we had talked about it yesterday and pretty much every time the Orioles have pitched. Jorge Lopez, again, I think he's an average pitcher, still prone to give up home runs, 1.46 for the season, 4.58 xFIP. But once they get him out of the game, they just get into a really favorable matchup against whoever's coming in from Baltimore's bullpen, basically, because for the most part, they are all bad. So not only can they certainly get to Lopez, but they can tack on runs later in the game relatively easily as well. So with the ownership where it's at right now, I do like Tampa quite a bit, despite the park not being favorable.
Okay. What about the opposite side of this? Is there any interest in your Orioles?
With McClanahan getting 44% ownership, I think there's a little bit. The 1 through 6 or even 1 through 7 really in the Orioles lineup isn't terrible. Like we know Mullins is good. Mancini, Mountcastle, Hayes, Severino, Santander, those guys all have power. It is a pretty sizable park downgrade. McClanahan has been really good. It's not a team that I want to stake my afternoon on, but they're only getting 1% ownership, 3% chance of being the top stack. And then you also add in that if, the low probability chance they do score 8 runs or something, it's going to pay off really, really well for you and make up for all those times that they do what they're supposed to do and they don't win you any money.
Oh, the Orioles. They are so bad right now.
Yeah,
maybe not just right now, but
they've lost
always.
14 in a row, I think, for the second time this season.
That's so bad, dude.
Yeah.
Why is Luis Garcia not pulling up in this crunch, even when I upload him?
Because you also have the Nats Luis Garcia. Oh, nope, they're not on the slate, so that's not it.
Yeah, no, it's just not. It's not. I upload Luis Garcia. It doesn't trigger for him, so I'm having to type him in manually. He didn't show up in my first crunch, and I couldn't really figure out.
Yeah, he doesn't. He never shows up in Fantasy Cruncher. It always goes to the other Luis Garcia, or nobody.
Even when he's not involved.
Yes, or apparently nobody.
So I need to add the middle initial, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
Fair enough. Well, let's go ahead and rerun this crunch because having non-factual information isn't really going to get me anywhere. Do you have anything else you want to touch on for Rays and O's?
No, I mean, it's kind of like one of those Red Sox games that we've had recently where it's I think McClanahan's a really, really good play, but I think that the Orioles are also low enough owned. They make sense in large field tournaments. I think the Rays are the top stack right now, but then also Lopez is getting no ownership and the pitchers around him getting ownership aren't that great either. So I just have a lot of interest in pretty much all parts of this game for tournaments. All right. In smaller field stuff, it's pretty much just the Tampa side. As the contest size gets larger, I think I start to mix in the Orioles.
Okay. Tigers and Angels. 4.6 run implied total for the Tigers, 4.7 for the Angels. Matt Manning, Jose Quintana. I don't think we're rostering either one of these guys. Manning could go deep enough in the game, but stinks. Quintana can't go deep enough in the game and doesn't stink. Do any of those things seem appealing to you?
No. The Angels lineup does give you some strikeouts. Maybe even Matt Manning can strike these guys out, but it's tough. I mean, I would just rather be getting to Angels bats. And then Quintana, probably not particularly good anymore, but 2, hasn't started a game in a while. Most recently, he's been coming out of the bullpen. 5 pitches on the 15th, 21 on the 13th, 3 on the 7th, 13 on the 12th, 58 on July 29th. pretty difficult to see Quintana getting more than, let's call it like 4-ish innings.
I gave him 2. That seems like a pretty realistic scenario here. So doesn't appear that we're going to either pitcher. I'm really surprised to see this total be as high as it is. In my estimations, it should be more like 8.5, not the 9 and change that it's sitting at. So if anybody likes the under here, feel free to grab it, because this Tigers offense is kind of putrid at the bottom, or at least it looks a little putrid given where we're going. Do you like either side of this game from a bats perspective?
I like the Angels. Ownership's coming in about where it should be, but I think it's a good spot against Manning. Just really hasn't struck guys out this year. You get Shohei Ohtani. You can roster his home run today, which is nice. Jared Walsh is in the lineup. I really like the spot for him. He's got tons of power, strikes out a lot, but Matt Manning doesn't get swings and misses. And then I think that also just plays up guys like Justin Upton and Joe Adell that have power, but also strike out a lot. Manning will let them hit the ball. He hasn't done a very good job of limiting power this year against righties. A 206 expected ISO, 13.3% strikeout percentage, 152 expected ISO, 9.2% strikeout percentage against lefties. But the lefties in this lineup are going to hit for power kind of regardless. So I do like the Angels here. Tigers are a little bit tougher sell. Still no Eric Haas in the lineup. I believe he just went on the injured list. You have Daz Cameron back from either injury or AAA. I'm not sure which. He's got power and speed, but also doesn't hit the ball very often. I think the Tigers are okay, but the Angels are the side that I really would like to get to.
Okay. Top of the Tigers order looks fine in my end. They're probably a little underowned. The Angels are probably right on where Ohtani's pulling a ton of ownership and sort of tweaking the way that the Angels top stack odds look, but Goslin, Walsh, Upton, all basically properly owned. I don't really have much of a take on this game. I like it a lot more from the betting market than I do from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, it's just offenses for me.
Yeah. Why is that not showing up? Now, you actually are on that list now. I added you. I swear to God, I added you. Apparently, I didn't add you. Anyway, game 3, Rangers and Mariners. 4-run implied total for the Rangers, 4.5 for the Mariners. Spencer Howard, Chris Flexen. Spencer Howard not pulling any ownership at 5,300. Chris Flexen, on the other hand, pulling 18% at just 6,600. Am I missing something? Should Chris Flexen be getting more ownership than he currently is showing?
I kind of think he should be getting more than Mike Minor is against Houston. Flexen's not a great strikeout pitcher. He has been decent overall in terms of preventing runs this year, 4.49 xFIP, 0.93 home runs per 9, only a 16.3% strikeout percentage, but only walks 5% of hitters. But now he gets to go against this Texas team that strikes out plenty on their own, doesn't have a lot of hitters that are likely to do damage against Flexen. And most importantly, as I kind of mentioned when we talked about Jorge Lopez, the other options in this price range, you have Jorge Lopez in a tough spot against Tampa. You have Mike Minor in a really tough spot against Houston. And then you have Flexen against Texas. If Flexen were getting, 25, 30% ownership and Minor were getting 10, 15, I think you would start to make the case that Minor makes some sense as a pivot in tournaments. But I don't think Minor should actually be the one getting more ownership.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have Flexen popping quite a bit. Just $6,600, like a matchup against a terrible, terrible, terrible Rangers offense. This isn't the Rangers ballpark of this is a neutral park, a negative park for righty power. Like, it's not the same thing that it used to be. 4-run implied total. I don't have a problem going to more Chris Flexen here. I think this matchup looks pretty good. It's not the best strikeout matchup in the world, but it is a good matchup against a not good offense.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's kind of the Marco Gonzalez play from the last couple of times he faced Texas. He's not good. Flexen's not good, but he's also not awful. And he's fully stretched out, assuming he's pitching well. He's going to go deep into the game. And Texas just makes a lot of pitchers look better than they are.
Seattle bat thoughts?
I'm really interested to see how this goes. So Spencer Howard is only 5,300 for Texas. He hasn't pitched more than 3 innings in a game for the Rangers. I'm interested to see what they do with him today, because previously they were starting him and then using Taylor Hearn behind him as basically like a piggyback guy to cover most of the game between the two of them. Taylor Hearn started on Tuesday, so he's not, or I assume he's not going to be coming in to follow up Howard. So I don't know if they use someone else in that role, or do they let Howard go 5 innings? But either way, Howard, he's not bad the first or second time through the order. He starts to really drop off. The longer he's out there, you see his fastball velocity diminish. I think it's a pretty good spot for Seattle. It's not ever my favorite team to go to because they are mostly just kind of mediocre hitters. But I do think the price tag on JP Crawford is pretty good at 3,400. Mitch Haniger and Kyle Seager are actually good. Abraham Toro is pretty cheap. So I'm kind of neutral on Seattle. Like, I think they should get ownership. I think the ownership's about where it should be. It's a pretty good spot, but I think there's other spots I'm going to hold more.
Can you justify going to the Rangers given the fact that Chris Flexen is in 20% of lineups?
I don't really think so. Like, Nate Lowe's okay. Adolis Garcia, Jonah Heim. That 3-man, I think, makes some sense. You could, I guess, throw in Yanni Hernandez because he's fast. But right now, I don't think Flexen's really getting enough ownership that I want to get to much Texas.
Okay.
Especially because they're also projected for like 7% aggregate ownership because they're so cheap.
Let's see if I need to touch on anything else here. Where is my column that has DraftKings salaries? I need to fix something. Positional work. I'll deal with that later. All right. So nothing else for the Rangers, nothing else for the Mariners, which means we need to talk a little bit about OddsShopper. I used OddsShopper earlier today for the breakfast menu, and I believe that you guys should too, because if you're going to put any bets in whatsoever, that should be your first stop. You want to shop around, find the best line. There's no reason to leave any edge on the table, whether it's game lines, player props, futures. You can track bets, get notifications if you get any line movement. There's expected win percentages and expected ROI numbers on all of the MLB player props. That's all based on the Awesemo.com projections. Don't miss out. Go to OddsShopper.com. Use the tool. You don't have to go to OddsShopper.Awesemo.com anymore. It's just OddsShopper.com now. It's going to help you out in your sports betting pursuits. It's going to help you get the best line, and it's going to save you some money. Without question, as a free tool, it will save you money if you have the ability to bet at multiple books because you're going to find better lines. You're not going to find a lot of free tools out there that guarantee that it can't get any worse for you. I can't guarantee that the bets are going to win, but I can guarantee that you'll get the best line possible by using OddsShopper. White Sox and A's, 5-run implied total for the White Sox, 4 for the A's. Dylan Cease, Cole Irvin, who definitely didn't start yesterday, even though I wanted him to, going for the A's. 22% ownership coming to Dylan Cease. How do you feel about it?
I think it's about right. Like, on the one hand, he's getting about half the ownership of Shane Mcclanahan, which when you're talking about someone like Cease that actually has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 30.8%, you can kind of make the case where it's like, yeah, well, his ceiling is really, really high, and maybe he shouldn't be getting less ownership or, half the ownership at a discounted salary. But also, he's got a really difficult matchup with the Athletics, who don't really strike out a lot, have tons of power. They're going to make him throw strikes, make him, work in the zone, which he can have issues with at times as well. I think it's a really, really dangerous spot for Dylan Cease. So the ownership to me, I think, is coming in about where it should be given how difficult this matchup is.
Yeah, I got him in 20% of lineup, so I think that all looks fine. By the way, I was a bit higher on Flexen and Garcia. We haven't touched on Garcia yet, but I guess we're about to. Any interest in Cole Irvin?
I don't think so. Just a little more expensive than I would like. He's an okay real life pitcher as far as limiting production, limiting runs, 0.73 home runs per 9, only walks 4.5% of hitters, but only a 17% strikeout percentage going up against a lineup that is almost entirely right-handed. Brian Goodwin and Zack Collins, the only left-handed bats in this lineup. For the season, Irvin has only struck out 16.1% of righties. 144 expected ISO is perfectly fine, but I think too high of a price tag for me to want to go to him here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about bats. I have the White Sox as my number 4 stack, although they are 10th in leverage. Are you looking to target against Cole Irvin with these Sox?
Probably going to be getting more to one-offs and mini stacks than full stacks. I do think individually Luis Robert at 3,200 is a really good value. He's hitting second, so that's a nice lineup bump for him. There's never anything wrong with going to like Abreu, Jimenez, but they are expensive. Andrew Vaughn also looks like a good value at 3,100. So I think mixing in those power bats to other full stacks is probably going to be the approach I take most often.
Pretty confident we'll be in the same sort of scenario here. I have the A's as my 4th best leverage stack, plus Dylan Cease at 20% ownership. I'm happy to get to some Oakland.
Yep. Pretty much always just, I said it yesterday. I didn't really want to get to them on that slate against Lynn, but that was an exception for me. Typically when Oakland's going to be low owned, I don't care that much who they're facing. And while I think Cease is good, he's not good enough that he's someone I'm looking to shy away from, because I just think Oakland has so much power in their lineup. They can do a lot of damage and really make life difficult. The lineup is a little bit weaker than normal. Kemp, and it's still good, but Tony Kemp is in there instead of Jed Lowry. So that weakens it a bit. You also have Olsen and Moreland. So on DraftKings, you can only roster either the 3 or the 4 hitter, which sucks. But still, with Cease getting about 20% ownership and Oakland projected to go under-owned, I like getting to Smokeland bets.
Okay. Anything else we want to touch on here between the White Sox and the A's?
Nope. Good to move on.
Perfect. Oh my God, I can't type. I just spelled Royals wrong 4 straight times. Royals and Astros. It's one of the easier words to spell in terms of names. 4.1 run implied total for the Royals, 5.1 for the Stros. Mike Minor, Luis Garcia. Good luck with that confusion. Mike Minor at 23% ownership. Luis Garcia at 23% ownership. I think Mike Minor is dramatically overowned. I think Luis Garcia is underowned. What are your thoughts?
Same page on both, I think. I understand why Minor's getting the ownership. Like, Mike Minor should just never be $5,700. That's too cheap of a price tag for essentially an average pitcher. Like, he's got a 23.5% strikeout percentage this year, 4.3 xFIP. He's allowed 1.5 home runs per 9, which is pretty high, but he's basically just an average major league pitcher. I don't know how or why he's ever $5,700. But then you're getting the ownership going there against an Astros team that is difficult to strike out. I will say the bottom of this Astros lineup is not as daunting as normal. Like, you have McCormick, Myers, Castro, Wilson rounding this team out. They're missing. There's no Brantley today.
Yeah,
is I think the main guy they're missing in addition to Kyle Tucker being on the injured list. You also get the lefty-lefty matchup with Castro in there instead of Maldonado. Minor has struck out 28% of lefties, so that's a nice bump for him. I think it looks like about as good an Astros lineup for Minor as he could get, but it's still a pretty tough spot. They still have an implied run total just north of 5, and Minor is still right now getting 20 to 25% ownership, which is pretty high. So I understand why he's getting there. I'm not saying just, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, not to play Mike Minor because he is underpriced, but I also think it's a really dangerous spot against Houston and a really tough spot for him to have a big game.
Yeah, I'm going to actively say don't play him. He showed up in 7% of my sims, owned at 23%. I will happily just go a different direction here. Let's talk a bit about these Astros bats. Not the lineup that we were totally expecting. It's a little weak. Not having Brantley there is a bit of a problem. Do you still want to go to Houston, given this matchup against Minor?
Yeah, they've still got enough good hitters. Like, Altuve is still good. Gurriel, Correa, Diaz is cheap. Alvarez is in the lineup, which is nice. And then you can always just round it out with one of these cheap guys at the bottom. Not the most exciting guys, but Jake Myers at 2K flat is fine. McCormick at 2,300 is fine. And right now we have Houston with the second highest top stack percentage. They themselves are projected to be owned about where they should be. But then when you factor in Minor getting 23% ownership or so, it does push Houston up a little bit for me. So not my number one stack, but still one that I like here against Minor.
Any interest in going to anything from the Royals in this matchup?
No, outside of Salvador Perez.
Yeah, I'm not a
just
huge
because
fan of what we're
catcher.
at here. Yeah, and that obviously on a 6-gamer, like, there's only 12, so right. You got to roster somebody at some point. Yeah, I can't. I like Garcia more than his current ownership, and I don't like the Royals. This isn't a great park. I mean, it's fine from a run perspective, but not a great power park. Just doesn't seem like the spot for me. So let's close it out then with the Diamondbacks.
Did you want to talk about Garcia?
Did we not?
I mean, you just kind of said, I like Garcia.
I don't have anything else to add other than the fact that I think that he should be owned significantly more than the 23% that he's pulling. Yeah,
I was going to say, this is the cheapest he's been since 10 starts ago. He's 8,400. The Royals don't have a ton of Ks, but Garcia's got a 29.5% strikeout percentage this year. I'm with you as far as I think Garcia should be getting more ownership. I think at the very least, Garcia should be more popular than Dylan Cease by a decent amount.
Yeah, like Garcia showed up in 36% for me, Cease in 20. I'm very happy with that ratio of those two guys. It's hard because the prices are so different, but like, I think Chris Flexen should be more owned than Dylan Cease as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Like, if Mike Minor is going to get 23%, like, I'd rather just take a lot more of Mike Minor's ownership and give it to Chris Flexen. It's not like anything else at the bottom is really appealing.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm sure I'm still going to play Minor, just probably not to the extent that the field is.
Diamondbacks and Phillies to close this bad boy out. Madison Bumgarner, Zack Wheeler. Wheeler at a crisp 56% ownership for today, the most owned pitcher on DraftKings, not on the FanDuel early slate. That's neither here nor there. Anything stand out to you regarding that Wheeler ownership? To me, it's spot on.
Yeah, I think it's where it should be. He's the best pitcher on the slate. He's got a good matchup against Arizona in Arizona. There's not really anything negative to say. No Kettle Marte in the lineup. No Carson Kelly. Yeah, it's a bad Arizona lineup, even by Arizona lineup standards.
Yes, it is. The question then becomes, do you have interest in 9% owned Madison Bumgarner at 7,100?
God, I hate this guy. I wish he would just retire. Yes, and I have interest in him the same way I have interest in Taiwan Walker on the main slate. I don't really think it's a great spot for him, but he's also just not really getting ownership. And when you're getting pitchers like Mike Minor against Houston and Chris Flexen, just in general, getting ownership, it's not a bad idea to roll some of that into Madison Bumgarner. But overall, I think Flexen does look a little bit better given his matchup. I would expect I get pretty close to the field, if not a little bit over on Bumgarner.
Okay. Yeah, I have him at 3% in the sim, so I'm not a huge fan, but anywhere in that 5 to 10 range works.
I'll be interested to see what that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I was going to say, I'll be interested to see what the Philly lineup looks like too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
like
the estimated Philly lineup looks good.
What'd you say?
The estimated Philly lineup looks good as far as
but like if you get Andrew Knapp instead of JT Realmuto or something like that, it's going to make the lineup a bit more favorable.
Yeah, I have the Phillies third overall, but I do have them as the worst leverage stack of the day. So I think this is going to be more individual pieces. But a lot of the ownership is just going to Realmuto, 30%, in fact, based on the estimated lineup. How are you going to manage the Phillies just based on our current assumptions?
Yeah, just kind of middle of the pack for me because I like Tampa more. I like the Angels more. I like Houston more, given Minor's ownership. And then you get to teams like Oakland that are just way under-owned. So Philly kind of just, with the ownership where it is right now, looks more like a team where, I'll use Segura to round out lineups. I'll take the value on McCutchen. I'll certainly use Realmuto, assuming he's in the lineup. But I think that from a 5-man stack perspective, I probably get to quite a few other teams before I get to Philly.
How much does this information help your thoughts on Zack Wheeler? He is 6-1 with a 1.47 ERA in 9 day games this year. I
mean, I don't hate hearing it since I already was going to roster a lot of Wheeler. If I wasn't going to roster Wheeler, I would not be changing anything.
There we go. Diamondbacks bats against this Wheeler ownership?
No, I'm good.
Yeah,
I pulled up. So this is since 2020. Just overall, not against right-handed pitching or anything. Josh Rojas has a 109 WRC plus. That is the extent of hitters in the lineup that are above 100. They're also missing Asdrubal Cabrera. That's who was missing. Yeah, I mean, this is just, it's bad. And the strikeout numbers are good for Wheeler too. Rojas at 25%. Peralta's only 18%. Varsho's at 26%. Van Meter's at 30%. Holiday's at 34%. Drew Ellis, limited sample, but 34%. I'm good on the Diamondbacks.
Would you mind filtering that a little bit further for day games on a Thursday? I want to know if we can get more pointless garbage spouted out. So just checking. Anything else for Phillies and Diamondbacks?
Nope.
Okay. Well, let's sum it up then. Favorite stacks on the early?
Tampa Bay, Angels, Houston, if Minor's ownership stays high.
Okay. And from a pitching perspective, this one seems pretty easy.
Wheeler, Garcia. God, I don't even want to say Flexen's name. If you need value, Flexen.
No Mcclanahan in that list?
I don't want to name every pitcher. Yeah, McClanahan's up there too, though. I like at the top end, I like Wheeler more than I like McClanahan. I also like McClanahan.
Okay, perfect. That works. That's it. We hit a main slate of 4 games. We hit an early slate of 6 games. So we got through all 10 in a crisp hour. I'm pretty happy about it. Adam, what have you got going on for the rest of the day?
Deep dive coming out probably around 3 Eastern, and then live before lock at whatever time you said live before lock was at.
That would be 5:30 with Eric. So make sure you tune into that one. I, on the other hand, am done for the day. So I'm going to go put some huevos con chorizo into my tummy tum. It's going to be a good time. Good luck tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Please hit that like button one last time on your way out the door. Thank you to OddsShopper for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Keep your eyes peeled for all of the content here at Awesemo Odds, at Awesemo Fantasy Football. It never stops. We're bringing the goods. We'll be back again tomorrow, closing out this work week. We're not going to have that discussion again, Adam. Closing out the work week tomorrow with more content. Good luck, everybody.